think you can get away with this? What's done that?
The seat wasn't just leather and steel. It was a throne carved from years of struggle. Yet tonight, it was treated like nothing more than furniture to be stolen. Crystal chandeliers washed the ballroom in warm light. Music hummed like a polite secret. Laughter rose and fell in controlled waves. Servers slipped between tables, balancing silver trays, while the city's elite measured each other with quick glances and tight smiles. At the head table, a single chair stood marked by a small engraved nameplate, initials only. Elegant and certain, the chair seemed to glow, not from the spotlight but from the story behind it. She noticed it first, a white woman in a satin dress the color of chilled champagne. Her eyes flicked from the floral centerpiece to the empty throne at the center. She checked the room, saw the cameras, the board members, the press. She moved with the easy confidence of someone used to doors opening. When a server reminded her the seat was reserved, she gave a soft laugh, the kind that suggests rules are for other people. Then she glided into the chair as if claiming it made it hers. Around her, the table shifted. Hands paused over wine glasses. A junior executive cleared his throat, then thought better of it. A partner studied the ceiling. The nameplate lay to her right, a tiny silver witness ignored and dismissed. The chair, however, was no ordinary seat. To those who knew the history, it was a monument. Years of sweat, rejection, and triumph had built it. It represented not just wealth, but legacy. The kind born from determination against odds no gala guest would dare imagine tonight. Yet here it was, occupied with arrogance. She leaned back, crossing her legs with practiced ease, scanning the room as if expecting applause. The murmur of conversations carried on, but each glance toward her held a question, a quiet disbelief. Who would dare? The orchestra swelled, the light seemed brighter, and still she sat there satisfied. Her lips curved into a smirk, the kind that announces victory before the contest is even declared. In her mind, she had won the seat. The room did not notice him at first. It only felt him, like a steady note beneath the music that made people sit a little straighter without knowing why. He entered without hurry. No fanfare, no raised voice. The tuxedo fit clean across his shoulders, but it was the posture that held the space. Calm spine, even breath, eyes that measured without rushing. A server stepped aside. A photographer lowered his camera. The orchestra's bright melody seemed to thin, leaving a pocket of quiet that moved with him. He took in the head table, the flowers, the gleam of the cutlery, the silver nameplate turned slightly away, and the chair now occupied by the woman in satin. Her laughter scratched at the air like a small blade trying to cut something it did not understand. He did not quicken his pace. He had learned long ago that speed belongs to panic. Power travels at the speed of choice. As he approached, memory rose like a scene projected against the far wall. A small diner years ago, a cracked vinyl booth. His mother in a neat blouse, hands folded, asking the server for a seat. The server's smile was tight. The sign said closed, though tables sat half empty. His mother thanked the server anyway, voice steady, and walked him out with dignity that cost her something. He was 11. He felt the burn of helplessness, a heat behind his eyes that turned into a promise. Silence would never be the place where his worth disappeared. If he chose silence, it would be the kind that speaks. He reached the table. The woman's perfume, crisp and cold, hung in the air. Her laugh came again, lighter this time, more forced. She leaned back as if the chair were a crown, and the room her audience. Some confusion? She asked, looking at the junior executive who could not meet her eyes. He looked at the chair. Then he looked at the nameplate. Then he looked at her. "Excuse me," he said, voice low but clear, the kind of sound that cuts clean through noise without raising itself. She tilted her head, amused. "Yes?" Around them, glasses paused midair. A whisper passed down the table, then disappeared when it reached him. The chandeliers hummed softly. The napkins, folded like small white tents, watched the scene in perfect stillness. He remained quiet for a breath, not to stall, to allow the room to return to its true temperature. Another memory flickered. A shared apartment, paint peeling. A desk pushed against a window that would not close all the way. Nights of work. The city's sirens below. a notebook full of refusals that he turned into plans. A partnership offer that came with conditions for optics, a loan denied until his numbers left no room for opinion. He had learned the difference between noise and truth. The woman tapped the table with a French manicured finger. "If this is about seating," she said lightly, "I'm sure we can, what's the phrase, work something out." He kept his eyes on hers. No anger, no flinch. "That chair is reserved," he said. Her smile widened. "For whom?" A few at the table knew. They tried to speak and then they didn't. Some were afraid to challenge her. Some were afraid to assume. Fear takes many shapes at a gala. His silence grew, not heavy but exact, the way a scale waits for the last weight. In that silence, the contrast stood bright, her laughter fluttering like paper, his stillness resting like stone. He reached out, not to her, not to the cameras, but to the nameplate. He set it square in front of the chair so the script faced the room. He did not point to the engraved initials. He did not list the years, the patents, the payroll, the walls built and broken and built again. He did not need to. Her smile thinned. "You're serious?" she asked, a small laugh leaking through the words. He thought again of his mother's hands folded in that diner, the cost of grace, the decision to carry himself in a way that protected more than his pride. He thought of young eyes in this room, interns at the back, staff along the edges, watching to learn what dignity looks like when tested. Air moved across the table like a careful wind. The orchestra changed songs. Somewhere a glass chimed against another, and the sound stopped short. He placed his hand lightly on the chair back. Not possessive, certain, when he spoke. The line was simple, final, and kind. Each word chosen. None wasted. "That seat belongs to me." The silver nameplate lay flat on the linen tablecloth, shining under the chandelier. Its engraved initials were a quiet announcement of ownership, but the woman refused to look at it. Her hand brushed it aside as though it were decoration. She crossed her legs, leaned back in the chair, and adjusted her satin dress with a smile meant to seal her claim. Around the room, murmurs traveled like invisible ripples. Some guests whispered behind raised glasses. Others lowered their eyes, waiting for someone else to act. A camera light flickered at the edge of the room, subtle but unmissable. Phones shifted discreetly in hands. This moment, fragile and tense, was already being recorded. He stood across from her, posture steady, silence intact. To most, his stillness looked like hesitation. To him, it was a test he had endured before. He remembered the boardroom from years earlier. Long table, polished oak, 12 men in tailored suits leaning forward as if their weight could crush him. His data had been clear, his strategy airtight, yet the question always circled back, sharp and cold. "But do you think you belong here?" They had smiled while doubting him, dressing disbelief in polite words. Every time he had answered, not with anger but with results they could not deny. Still, the sting of those moments lived inside him, not as weakness but as fuel. Tonight felt no different. The woman laughed lightly, tilting her head. "I think I'll stay here," she said, voice carrying just far enough for the nearby tables to hear. Surely one chair doesn't matter. Her words carried the tone of entitlement disguised as charm. But in the silence that followed, they sounded brittle. The room held its breath, waiting. He looked again at the nameplate. A small piece of silver, but more than metal. It was a witness, proof of battles fought, contracts won, lives changed through the empire he had built. To ignore it was to ignore everything he had earned. Still, she would not move. She gripped the armrests now, as though tightening her hold on stolen ground. Her smile grew sharper. Whispers rose at nearby tables. "Is she serious? Doesn't she know? Why doesn't he?" The orchestra played on, but even the music seemed thinner against the tension. He stayed silent a moment longer, watching the contrast unfold. Her laughter, bright but hollow against his silence, solid as stone. Cameras caught both, but only one would endure. She leaned further back in the chair, the motion deliberate, claiming not just space but defiance. Then with a smirk, she asked the question that cut through the room like a blade. "And who exactly are you to stop me?" The chandelier light gleamed like a crown above the room, but his story began under a single dim lamp. He did not raise his voice. He did not demand attention. He simply stood at the head table, one hand resting on the chair back, the other steady at his side, and allowed the truth to arrive with him. The woman kept her seat, smiling as if this were a game. Cameras tilted, hungry for drama. The silver nameplate caught a bead of light and sent it across the linen like a signal flare. "I should introduce myself," he said, calm and even. The nearest tables leaned in. The orchestra softened. A server froze with a tray mid-air, crystal flutes trembling like nerves. He gave no speech about status. He offered no list of titles. Instead, he opened a door the room had never seen. "I started in an apartment where the window didn't close," he said. "In winter, the wind came through the frame and moved the paper on my desk." The chandelier's warm glow seemed to pull back as his words drew the picture. A narrow space, chipped paint, a mattress on the floor, and a desk crowded with wires and hope. His laptop fan whirred like a tired breath. The keys clicked in the dark while the city outside argued with sirens and late buses. He wrote code until the letters blurred, and the cursor felt like a heartbeat. The woman's smile tightened by a fraction. She looked beyond him, as if searching for someone who would interrupt this unexpected turn. "No one did," he went on. "I pitched my idea to 2 investors in a coffee shop. They said I had a good story, but not the right look for the front of a company. They asked if I'd consider a different role, something quieter." A murmur moved across the room. Some faces hardened at the memory. Others looked down because they recognized the language. He did not linger in anger. He shifted. "I tried again," he said. "I signed with partners who loved our numbers. They praised the product, praised the growth, and then they tried to change the terms after the contract. Smaller share, smaller voice. They said it was standard." The word standard fell like a cold coin on the table. The woman glanced at the board chair, then at the nameplate, then away. Her fingers smoothed the satin over her knee. "I kept building," he said. "I kept shipping. When banks hesitated, our customers didn't. When doors closed, our data opened them. When the power in my apartment cut out at 2 in the morning, I wrote the next function by phone light." Above him, chandeliers glittered. Inside him, the memory of a desk lamp flickered, thin, stubborn enough. The contrast sharpened the scene. A ballroom painted in gold, and a past held together by tape and grit. He was not bragging. He was documenting. "I hired my first team in a rented room with folding chairs," he said. "We mapped our future with a marker on the back of an old calendar. We promised each other that profit would never outrun principle." A young intern at the back pressed a hand to her chest and didn't know why. A senior partner adjusted his cuff and did know why. Truth has a way of putting a mirror in unexpected hands. He glanced at the nameplate, those engraved initials that had been pushed aside, and set it square again. The small gesture restored order without using force. "I learned," he said, "that silence is not surrender when it protects your ground. It is a line you draw until the facts can stand there with you." The woman shifted in the chair. Her smile returned, but it looked tired now, like a mask that had been used too many nights in a row. She tried to laugh. The sound went nowhere. He took a final breath, not for drama, but for respect. He looked at the board, at the staff along the walls, at the guests who had watched without speaking, at the cameras that would carry this moment farther than the room. Then he said the line that held the whole staircase of his life. From the dim lamp to the chandelier crown, I built this legacy from nothing. Every brick of this empire has my fingerprints. The words did not strike the room. They settled it. Glasses lowered. Phones stilled. Even the orchestra understood and went quiet, bow resting on string like a promise not yet played. Silence fell over the hall. The sound of truth does not always crash like thunder. Sometimes it spreads like a hush that freezes celebration mid-breath. Champagne glasses, once raised for toasts, halted in mid-air. Golden liquid trembled against crystal, reflecting the chandeliers above, but no one drank. Laughter that had filled the ballroom only minutes before broke into scattered whispers. The shift was so sudden, so sharp, that it felt like the music itself had fallen out of tune. The woman in the satin dress sat straighter, her hand gripping the armrest of the chair as though it might steady her. A smile stretched across her face, wide but brittle. She let out a soft laugh, high, dismissive, meant to erase the weight of what had just been spoken. "Well," she said, voice fluttering, "this has all become very dramatic, hasn't it?" but her words did not land. They floated empty into the charged silence. The eyes of the room had turned. Executives who had once leaned toward her now leaned back. Partners who had applauded her confidence minutes earlier now looked down at their plates, unwilling to share her spotlight. The very air seemed to tilt away from her. Phones buzzed discreetly under the tables. A message sent. A headline forming. Some guests typed quickly, eager to capture the moment before it spread without their names attached. Others hesitated, caught between loyalty and reputation. He remained still. He had said what mattered. His silence now held more strength than her scattered laughter. She tried again, chuckling louder this time, but even her laughter betrayed her, rising too fast, ending too sharp. Her eyes darted to the silver nameplate before her, polished and undeniable, carrying the weight of his initials like carved history. She shifted it slightly with her fingers, as if by moving it she could erase the truth. But the gesture only deepened the contrast. Her attempt to dismiss his steady ownership. Whispers multiplied, moving from table to table, not cruel, but decisive. "Did you hear? He built it himself." She didn't know. The ripple became a wave, and the wave became judgment. Some were embarrassed for her. Others were amused. Most were simply stunned by the audacity unraveling in front of them. Her smile faltered now. It trembled at the edges, fighting collapse. She glanced toward the board, seeking support, but the board members sat locked in silence, watching. The game had shifted and everyone knew it. Then movement. At the far end of the table, the board chair rose. His suit brushed clean against the chair back. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, cutting through the whispers. Conversations stopped as though commanded. Phones lowered. Eyes followed him. The woman's smile, still clinging to her lips, weakened under the weight of his approach. It no longer looked like confidence. It looked like fear wearing perfume. And as the board chair reached the table, her forced smile faded. The board chair's footsteps were slow, deliberate, the kind that turned a crowded ballroom into a courtroom without warning. He stopped at the head table, his gaze sweeping across the faces, lingering on the woman still seated in the CEO's chair, then shifting to the man who had built the empire. The silence was so complete that the faint hum of the chandeliers seemed loud, as if even the light itself waited for judgment. "Ladies and gentlemen," the board chair began, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Every seat in this hall tonight was chosen with purpose. But some seats carry more weight than others." The woman gave a sharp laugh, but it rang false. "Surely we're not making a spectacle over a chair," she said, her smile stretched thin. The board chair's eyes did not move from her. "A chair," he said, "can hold more than one body. It can hold a legacy." Whispers passed again, softer this time, but they all agreed with the truth. The engraved nameplate sat where he had set it. Plain, silver, undeniable. The CEO remained quiet. He had no need to argue. The room already knew. He held a napkin in his hand, folding it once, then again, precise and careful. The simple act spoke louder than words. Control, discipline, patience earned through years of battles bigger than this one. The woman shifted in her seat, heat rising to her cheeks. "I didn't mean any offense," she snapped louder now, as though volume could rewrite the moment. "It's just a chair." The board chair's expression tightened. "No," he said softly. "It is not just a chair. It is the seat of the founder. The man who carried this company from a small apartment to this very stage. And you," his eyes cut to her, "treated it like decoration." The ballroom seemed to exhale all at once. Cameras caught every word, every gesture, every angle of the contrast before them. Her flushed defiance against his quiet dignity. The CEO did not look at her. He folded the napkin once more, setting it neatly on the table, his composure unbroken. The image was clear. She fought for attention. He embodied restraint. "You see," the board chair continued, "this company was not given. It was built. Every brick, every wall, every triumph came at a cost. That chair represents sacrifice, not privilege. And it belongs," he turned toward the CEO, "to the man who earned it." Applause did not break out. Respect was too heavy for clapping. Instead, heads nodded slowly, a recognition deeper than noise. The woman's smile cracked. She pushed back the chair roughly, the screech of it cutting across the polished floor like a confession of guilt. Her face flushed deeper, anger now unmasked. She stood, eyes darting across the room, searching for even one ally. None came. This isn't over, she hissed, her voice low but sharp enough for the nearest tables to hear. Then she turned, her heels striking the floor like hammers, and stormed out of the hall. The chair remained where it had always belonged, silent, steady and waiting. The storm had passed, but its silence was louder than thunder. The chair stood empty now, pushed back into its rightful place at the head of the table. Its polished leather glistened under the chandelier, no longer contested, no longer disrespected. What had moments ago been treated as common furniture now stood like a monument, not to wealth, not to position, but to dignity won through years of struggle. The CEO sat beside it, posture steady, his hand resting lightly on the table. He did not gloat, he did not smile at her exit. His calm had outlasted her fury, and that calm filled the room more powerfully than any applause. Guests began to move, slowly at first, as though measuring whether the silence would allow it. Then one by one they approached. An executive he had once argued with offered a stiff handshake. Impressive, he muttered, his eyes avoiding the chair. A partner leaned closer, voice hushed with guilt. I should have spoken up sooner, she said. We all should have. Their words carried respect but also regret, the regret of silence chosen for comfort instead of truth. He accepted each gesture without triumph. He nodded, his replies brief, steady, and kind. He had never needed their validation. He had needed their recognition of what was already true. The orchestra played again, softer this time, like an apology woven into sound. Glasses clinked once more, but the mood had shifted. Celebration had been replaced by reflection. The incident had carved its mark into the evening, a reminder that legacies cannot be dismissed as easily as a nameplate pushed aside. His eyes returned to the chair. To everyone else it was empty. To him it was filled with the memory of his mother leaving the diner with her dignity intact, filled with long nights under dim light, filled with broken promises and the strength to rise again. The chair was no longer just a symbol of success. It was a record of perseverance. A small group of guests lingered at the edge of the table, hesitant but eager to offer respect. Some apologized, some thanked him for his patience, and some said nothing at all, only bowing their heads as they passed. Their gestures were small, but he understood. Silence can wound, but silence can also be a form of admission. Through it all, he remained still, folding his napkin once more. His restraint as precise as his earlier words. Then came a voice, not loud, not practiced, but honest. A young intern stood near the corner of the table, barely older than the memory of that apartment where it all began. Her notepad shook slightly in her hands. She looked at him wide-eyed, carrying the question the room had not dared to ask. How did you stay so calm? She whispered, and the silence returned, waiting for his answer. The candle on the gala table burned low, its small flame steady against the night. Refusing to fade, the young intern stood waiting, her question still hanging in the air. How did you stay so calm? She looked at him as if the answer mattered more than anything taught in books, more than any lecture about profit or growth. The hall around them had thinned, guests drifted toward exits, their laughter softened into thought. But the chair, the candle, and the quiet remained. He placed the folded napkin gently on the table, then turned to her. His voice carried the same calm that had unsettled arrogance and steadied a storm. Calm is not weakness, he said. It is choice. The intern's brows drew together, unsure. He leaned back slightly, as if inviting her into a truth he had lived for decades. When I was young, he continued, I watched my mother denied a seat in a place where she had every right to sit. She walked away with grace, not anger. I learned that day that dignity can outlast insult. That silence can protect your ground better than shouting, if it carries truth behind it. She nodded slowly, her pen hovering above her notepad, though she did not write. She only listened. He gestured lightly toward the chair at the head of the table. That seat was never just about comfort. It represents every late night, every rejection, every betrayal I turned into a step forward. So when it was taken tonight, I did not need to argue. I knew the truth already. And the truth has a way of speaking louder than pride. The intern's eyes flicked to the chair, Then back to him. So you didn't fight? Because you didn't need to? He smiled faintly. Real power doesn't raise its voice to be heard. Real power is patience, restraint, the strength to hold your ground without losing your integrity. The candle flame trembled, then steadied again. Its persistence mirrored his words, light that burns not by force but by endurance. Around them, a few remaining guests paused to listen. Some smiled, warmed by the lesson. Others looked inward, recognizing their own silence earlier in the evening, wishing they had spoken. But none could deny the weight of what they were hearing now. The intern asked one more question, her voice soft but clear. And if someone tries again? If they try to take more than a seat? He looked at her, the wisdom in his eyes sharpened by memory. They can steal a seat, he said, but they can't rewrite a legacy built with integrity. The words settled into the hall like the final note of a symphony, leaving nothing more to be added. The intern lowered her notepad, eyes wide, carrying not just an answer but a lesson she would hold for the rest of her life. The candle's flame flickered once more, then burned steady, unextinguished. The night ended not on humiliation, but on justice, dignity, and inspiration.